say welcome to Diversity. I think I've listed it as Diversity of the Earth and Spirit, because it's not only about the biodiversity that's in this wonderful earth we've got, and with this isolation time, a lot of people have been working with their gardens and probably been discovering things about the soil that they perhaps haven't seen for years or haven't taken much notice of, and this is a whole spell of wonder. Is this good for the garden? Is this bad for the garden? And stuff like that. So this has been a great wonder time, I believe, anyway. But the matter of spirit is actually how you actually apply yourself to the biodiversity. I'm going to start with a story. It's by Wangari Maathai from Kenya. A wonderful woman, environmental activist out there in Kenya, and a teacher. And there's a little story that she tells. You might be familiar with it. It's told to children a lot. And it tells of a huge forest fire in Kenya, which unfortunately when they have droughts, it frequently happens. And this forest fire was huge, and all the animals were running out of this forest fire. And the birds were coming out, and they got to safety out of the fire, and they were looked in, and they were mesmerized, and they were really overwhelmed to see their home, the place that they lived, suddenly burning away. What are they going to do? All were overwhelmed except for a little hummingbird. And this little hummingbirds, they do, just looking and flapping. Oh, what can you do? What can we do? And this little hummingbird went into a stream that was by all these animals looking, and took a little bit of water in its little tiny beak, and it flew off into the fire and dropped the water from its little beak. And it came back to the water, got a bit more water in its beak, and it went off to the fire, and it just kept going backwards, forwards, and of course with its little wings it was zoom, 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 and all these other animals, they were looking this way. What on earth is this little creature doing? Especially the elephant. I mean, the elephant has got this great big trunk and would be able to take all that water and spray it over the fire. Oh no, elephant doesn't do that. Elephant is too busy criticizing this little hummingbird and doing what it's doing, and saying, what on earth are you wasting your time with that? You're not going to be able to put out the fire with the little drops of water, with your little tiny beak and your little wings going into the fire and dropping it. And the hummingbird just kept going and kept going, and unfortunately elephants and the others were kind of agreeing with the elephants. Why on earth are you bothering? And eventually the hummingbird turned round to the elephant and the others and said, well, I'm doing what I can do. I'm doing what I can do. And to me, that's a wonderful approach to the whole approach of biodiversity. It's one of those subjects that, thanks to social media, I believe, has become very much to the attention of a lot of people, but it's in the way that it seems to have come to attention. To me, it's a lot like the permaculture, self-sufficiency, organic gardening. We pick up these things and it becomes an incredible, wonderful thing. We might see it as something that can save the planet, can save the earth. And we want to be totally engrossed, totally involved. We want to know exactly what we're doing, how to go about it. And the fortunate thing that I recently read is that people in Ireland, compared to the rest of Europe, on average, they actually have larger gardens than most people in Europe. You wouldn't think so, because up until recently, it didn't seem you saw many Irish people at garden centres, though garden centres have been expanding. But the one thing that's happened since this lockdown and this isolation, you try ordering plants online to a garden centre and they open for about an hour a week. The demand is like it was with toilet papers in the supermarket. So there's a great interest, and obviously people, if they're getting plants, are trying to, they're doing something. But what happens, I feel, with a lot of people is they want to get involved with the land. And we'll take the biodiversity. So what do people do? They try and order books. they watch videos, they watch documentaries, and try to get a whole understanding, a whole learning about what this biodiversity thing is and what they need to do in their own little garden. And they can spend a month looking at this stuff. They can spend a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And there's going to be like the elephants and all those other mammals that were on the outside of that burning forest. They're not being the little hummingbird. And this is the thing, you don't have to think or plan or learn, you don't have to get a degree, you don't have to get a doctorship in biodiversity, because it's been around for millions of years, and it's all down to doing what you can do, the little bits that you can do. Just get in there and actually do it. One of the things that I think is a distraction from doing that, there's a buzz phrase going around about connecting with nature. And I think carrying that is kind of a first step to perhaps a non-application, like those mammals on the edge of the forest. Sort of a non-application, because it's connect with nature as if we're on the outside of it. I feel is, and firmly believe, goodness, the earth is a closed system of life, and it's life that goes into organic bodies, and it has a time on earth. If it's a butterfly, a couple of days. If it's a bird, 8 or 9 years maybe. If it's us, if we're lucky, 50 to 100 years or so. But once the body is sort of worn out or diseased or been taken over by some other bio life form, we go into the process of biodiversity, our life just disappears. It goes somewhere else. It's never destroyed. This is first year physics in secondary school, to learn that nothing's destroyed, it's just changed into something else. And we're all part of that, and I think that's an understanding that's lost. So instead of connecting with nature, I feel we ought to be in a position of being mindful that we are of nature, but we're actually denying it. So rather than connect with nature, how about turning that round and saying, I'm going to stop denying nature. I'm going to stop denying nature. And that's what people have been doing through this lockdown. They suddenly see that it's around, they suddenly realise they are part of it, and they're actually doing, a lot of people are doing things within that. And I kind of parallel that with when you go into markets or supermarkets even, and you go to the produce stand and you see all the stuff everywhere labelled as organic vegetables. And sometimes that irritates me, and sometimes that amuses me, because inorganic, what we sort of call in conversation inorganic vegetables, hasn't been around all that long. How long has it been? It certainly became abundant since the 50s with the chemical fertilizers and the chemical insecticides. Certainly these were around since the 19th century, but it really got going after the Second World War. So what we call organic today has been around for at least 2,000 years, because the medieval monks were the ones that had these genetic skills to change wild plants into a lot of the vegetables that we make today. So people have lived for a couple of thousand years or so on what we call organic vegetables. So I feel, why isn't it we go into a market and the labelling is there for inorganic vegetables, the ones that use chemicals? Obviously that's not very good for the marketing. This is a corporate thing. But this is what I feel we need to understand, is that the organic vegetables is what's natural to us. And likewise with the biodiversity, that we are of nature. We can't escape it, but we deny that we're part of it. So I think that's why I say biodiversity and spirit. I think the first thing is to perhaps understand that we are part of it and appreciate that we are part of it. And once you've got that, then somehow our conscience, our common sense lures us to what we need to do. So as going back to, if you started, if someone asked me, what's the best book on biodiversity? What's the best documentary? I'd kind of say, forget about it. Have a look around your garden and spaces that you go to, and see if you can recognize where intricacies of biodiversity, which is really life weaving with other life vessels weaving with other life, where you might get ladybugs with other bugs on the leaves, in the soil. And if you go in, get yourself a handful of soil, if it's nice healthy soil, and you might be discovering this for the first time for years in the last couple of months, and it's a shame I don't have a camera person, so I can't just go out and grab soil. It's very difficult to grab a bit from here, but you grab some soil and you could have worms, and there's beetles, there's millipedes, centipedes, there's other kinds of creepy bugs, earwigs, all these different creatures weaving in and out, and they might be attacking each other, or they might be, in most cases, eating up the debris in the soil. As you're aware that soil is just really a kind of pile of shite, really. It's just things that are rotted down, as they do at the end of the year, the end of the season, the whole someone process of regeneration, transformation. So you've got what was the old bodies and the old debris of the leaves, and you've got all these creatures going around eating it up and creating new life with it, new fertility. And to me, that's biodiversity, is seeing all of this activity going on, and it gives you an understanding that if we left it alone, or that everything somehow comes into balance. If there's too much of something, then it can get eaten away and balanced down. And we, I feel, are part of it, and it's that simple. Now when it comes to, well, how do I enhance biodiversity in my own garden, in my own, if you don't have a garden, in the community garden, you might have an allotment, you might share some outdoor place with someone. If you're not, I advise find out how you can. It will really be incredibly satisfying. And I'm going to move over now to this book, and Leslie O'Hara is watching, and the first I saw of this, and this I suppose should go through Zoom, so I hope you sort of can take heart with me trying to demonstrate this. This is Gardening for Biodiversity, and Leslie O'Hara posted it on his Facebook, and I thought, well, this is interesting, and he advised people to send an email to Leitrim County Council Heritage Officer. So I did, and later that day I got an email from the Sligo Heritage Officer and saying, oh, I've just had an email sent to me saying you want this book, so I'll put it in the post for you right away. And then I start hearing people from Offaly and Laois who also got this book from their heritage officer because someone recommended it, and I was very jealous because they didn't just get this book, they got other little books on bird watching, insect watching and other subjects. A beautiful collection. It is free, and one thing I didn't point out is the reason I'm doing this as a Sunday session, and probably why this book is out. This is supposed to be the first day of Biodiversity Week. It should have started today, but of course everything's cancelled. So I gather the county councils had funds to put on Biodiversity Week, and I wouldn't be surprised if these funds have brought this book out. Now there's a lot of you viewing that are not in Ireland, and when I finished this live stream, I will put a link in the comments that was passed to me very kindly by Val Robus, where you can actually get a PDF, download a PDF copy of this, and it might be worth printing out and putting some kind of binder, because I feel this is a book to actually have on hand to grab, rather than just look it up on your phone or online, because you're going to find this is something you're going to pick up quite often once you had it. Not as an instruction book, but as a trigger. You can sort of browse through it, and I'm going to go through it a little bit with you. It sort of has an introduction and how every gardener is important. As you see, we got these amazing colour graphics, a little bit of text, very easy to read. So you can see this is something that's for all the family, it's for adults. Children can fully understand this, and it's actually for children that are just learning to read. I think this is a lovely challenge to learn to read bits of this as well, because they can look at the text, get an understanding, and by looking at the pictures, understand what's going on. And then there's an explanation a bit of what is biodiversity, and then it's looking into the soil and the insects and what they're doing, and then moving. And this is something I'm sure you can relate to, because with biodiversity, the surprise when you go through this book is you think, what shall I do for biodiversity? And by looking through this, you look around and you go, well, this is already happening. It's either happening naturally or because of things you did. You're causing a biodiversity situation, a biodiversity improvement situation. It wasn't your intention at the time. In fact, quite often these intentions were lazy. And I'm going to come to that, how laziness can be an incredible beneficiary to biodiversity. And so we've got here, we have the dandelions, and you might have heard a lot of the dandelions being the first flower out, full of nectar, great for the bees. Encourage them, don't go cutting your lawn and getting rid of all of the dandelions as soon as they come out. Willow tends to grow wild everywhere. I'm in a willow cairn here, and it's great. The birds love it in the spring. Well, there's still some there over the catkins. They actually get pollen out of it. Birds, bees, insects, they all love it. Various purposes, and I'm going to come across another purpose very shortly. And then we go into the brambles. People cut the brambles back, but the birds love the brambles, and if they can get to the brambles, they probably leave some of your own soft fruit that you've cultivated. Clover. We used to have a lot of clover here. I don't know what's happened to it. I probably will have it on the triple spiral labyrinth. It comes up there each year. And that is a prize. That is real nectar, abundant nectar for the bees and the butterflies and all other insects. Ivy. A lot of people think ivy is a nuisance. I could perhaps do a whole Sunday session on ivy because it's such a misunderstood plant. But in winter they come out with these beautiful berries, and it's great. It's winter food for the birds, because even though we put bird seed out and stuff, they still appreciate having the fresh berries. So the ivy helps them. And where there is ivy, it creates cover for the cocoons of caterpillars and butterflies. So all sorts of biodiversity is protected behind the ivy. And then we move on because of birds and what you can actually do, bird feeders. Of course, a lot of people have got bird feeders, so it goes into that. And it's wonderful. It's an incredible mindful thing to do, to just watch the birds. You can spend hours at it. It's very addictive to identify the birds, hear the different bird song, and also to watch the different behaviours. When you see the tits and the chaffinches, they're very community. They're always in bunches and they're always fighting with each other. But then you get other birds like the robin, and surprisingly the bullfinch. They're quite independent. They don't like other birds around them. So you get to see these behaviours. Wonderful thing to have. And then there's here that, as well as putting the seeds out, is grow your own bird food. The ivy example I showed there, you can be growing rowans, the brambles earlier. What else they got here? The crab apples. Well, they don't seem to eat them here, but it's available. And the elderberries, they certainly love those. Honeysuckle. I noticed the honeysuckle here, that the birds here really go to town on that. But I love this headline here, learning to share your home. And this is what I feel is what biodiversity is about. It's not about going into your land and seeing what you can clear from the land. If we've got an ego approach, and this is the thing I think that distracts us from and makes us denial of nature, is when we let our personal egos grow, because as humans we are more advanced than other mammals. We do have hands, we do have a logic mind, we do create things, we do make things, we do organize things. But unfortunately when we organize things, it pushes other life forms out, and then we get this illusion we're in control, and the whole genocide can take place where we clear a land, make it neat and tidy, we grow crops, and all the life that was there before has had to go somewhere else, and we're not sharing, and things get lost. There's soil erosion. suddenly after a few years the crops don't grow, so you have to put more chemicals on. Now it's all about learning to share your home, and the home being here the garden and the outside that you work with. And then Birdbath, yeah, they're brilliant. I got an old granite Birdbath. They love just swooping down and flapping the wings and flapping out, and that's lovely to watch too. And then it kind of expands how you can put all these into applications. The wildflower lawn and herbs. Is that the herb? I'm looking upside down. Pollinators. So, and look at all these lovely graphics in this. Grow your own herbs. We got herb spiral labyrinths. I'll probably do a session in there one day. It's wonderful. It goes on all these things, and I bet already as I'm pointing these things out, you're saying, "Oh yeah, I've got that in my garden. I do that," and that's wonderful. It's just like the hummingbird. You do what you can do, and I think that's a lot to do with this. What are we up to here? Leave. Oh yeah, this is my favourite bit. Leave an untidy corner of your garden for wildlife. I'm always leaving untidy corners. I'm always wanting to get the plants in and get crops in for drying, and I tend to pile stuff up. And once a year the willow gets trimmed, February or March, and it gets piled. There's a willow pile, and because willow, when you cut the trimmings, willow's useful. You can weave with them. That's why you got basket makers. They can be used as poles for your crops, and you can make various things with them. They're very good to form, what do they call them? They call them faggots when you actually tie them together and put them on a water bank so that it doesn't silt up. But when I went, I'd left a pile and I went to sort of sort it out, and I wanted some poles and went to sort it out, and I saw birds come. It's all a sort of mess, and there's other junk being thrown in, leaves and various other sort of rotting down things, and I saw birds going in and out. There were wrens and there were robins, and I thought, oh, I better not touch that. And I thought initially they were just in for food, and then after a few days I realized they were taking bits in. They were nesting. And there, without me planning, just by my own untidiness, I had created a nesting home for birds. And this is what we all do. Just gardens are not for being neat and tidy. You don't need to keep mowing your lawn. You don't need to keep trimming your hedge. You don't need to clear up your piles because something in nature is going to find that, oh, I can be a home here. And when I go here, I look under my piles and there's frogs. That's a common thing, is the frogs. And I just say, I'm not clearing up today. Just wait until they finish, because they're never permanent homes for those. But this is a vital part of biodiversity, is being untidy. And I think that's as much a lesson as I was saying, as instead of connecting with nature, but deny, how can I put it, but stop your denial of nature. I think this is a second lesson. Don't be tidy. Try not to be tidy, because something, you can't really share your garden if you're ultra tidy. It can cause a bit of a problem. And then it goes plant native trees, and that's quite important with native woodlands, especially if you've got a neighbour wood by you. The lovely thing about a native woodland is that you pick up the soil in a native woodland and you will find all sorts of bug activity. I mean, you grab some of that nice dark black soil that you get in woodland, pick it up, and the whole soil in your hand starts wriggling all over you because it's so full of life. And then you try doing that in a thick spruce plantation, and it's as if you're picking up a piece of desert. You can actually feel that it's lifeless. There's absolutely no sensory response. Whereas, so some people, if you go into a native woodland, if you're not used to it, but, overcome that fear of, because the sort of is really, again, like being the elephant, all those mammals that are outside the forest. you know, you're being outside of it all, but you soon get used to it. And maybe things do sting. There are things that bite and sting. The ants, we got the fire ants here, but you do recover. And of course we have the midges. I thought the midges would be here today, but they're not. And then it goes into how to grow willow from cuttings, and what are we on now? Hedgerows, yeah, lovely. Especially when you do willows from cuttings, that can be the start of a hedgerow. Get rid of the wooden fence. We've still got a bit here, but I'm going to be replacing that with some trees and a hedge. And of course, all kinds of creatures and bugs love to live in hedges. They're not going to live on your wooden fence, and especially not your brick wall. But the one thing I thought about brick wall, if I passed it, there's one thing in here about dry stone walls. I probably passed it, and that's one thing we got, and that's fascinating, because I talked about piles of rubbish, I suppose, where the wrens and the robins are nesting. In the dry stone walls, the coal tits and the blue tits, they tend to nest in there each year. So everything that you've sort of got around, other creatures are going to make most of it. Also in piles of rubbish, I haven't seen any here, but in other places I've lived, you lift up the pile of rubbish and there's hedgehogs, and hedgehogs are really a huge garden friend, and of course the ladybugs are too. And you read about here, and then they got a section on bats. That's fascinating. And in one part here it was encouragement to build bat boxes, bird boxes. And then we go into all the other mammals and moths. And this is the bit I love, is create a water area. We do have a pond here. And other than that, you do have a pond, the frogs come into it, there's frog spawn. But if part of it overgrows, you end up with a bog garden. And that's very useful too. So it goes into the water things. So there's a lot, as you see, there's a lot into this pond life. And then there's an app you can get to where you can help out the biodiversity people by recording things you see and send them the information. Lots of useful links to follow up. As I say, don't get obsessed with this. Go into it. But this book, as I say, write to the Heritage Officer, look it up. I will provide links again for your county council. Ask for them while they still have them in stock. Well worth it. I think you'll keep it in your bookstore for a long time. And the nice thing is, it's not really an instruction book. It's an ideas book. It's something you can browse through at any time, and you'll be saying things, oh yeah, I'm already doing that. Oh, that's a great idea. I can do that too. Now, as I say, I first learned about this on the Facebook, and I must have a bit of a word about the social media, because unfortunately Facebook, and it is a huge monster corporation around the world, and it's had a lot of flack, and it's been well deserved. Flack for the fake news it sends around, the conspiracy theories and people concerned with all this information that the CIA, GCHQ, whatever it is in China, all these people are reading everything that we're doing. But I find that amusing, because I can't even get around to reading all my posts, and I'm sure you're the same too. So it's a sort of a fear-mongering thing that, you know, it's not going to knock on your door, it's not going to make any difference. But the one thing I have noticed, and especially through this lockdown and through this isolation time, that the actual Facebook's become quite useful, because people, they're indulging in these things, and they're putting pictures and videos of the things they're doing, and you can watch that, and oh, that's a great idea. And I think there's a great sort of social community learning, which is a great design for it. You get a bit of that from Meetup. I don't get so much of that from Twitter, which seems to be very political, and Twitter to me is like those animals on the outside of the forest, criticizing everything that's going on, but it's very little about what you're doing and what you're applying. But I am running out of time for this, and I hope that makes sense. The whole thing, there's really three things. That one is don't get too indulged in all the books. Don't think you've got to become qualified. Don't think you've got to be a biodiversity expert. You already are, because you're a living being, and your whole conscience, your instincts, your common sense is going to show you what to do. And this lovely book here is just going to confirm to you, and it's going to boost your esteem. Oh yeah, I'm doing that. So it's great to have this. This is a lovely thing as a reminder, a great tool. The second thing, stop yourself thinking about connecting with nature. Reverse it around and think of yourself as is stopping your denying of nature. You're already in there with that closed circuit. So that's very much the second thing. Do you know, I've actually forgotten what the third thing is that I was going to say. But as usual in this situation, I always finish up with a poem. And the one thing with the lockdown and all this busyness with the garden, I haven't actually been writing poetry. I've been so busy with the garden. But I picked up this lovely poem by a young person, USA. Her name's Elisa Jordan. She's from the Chase Middle School, Washington State in the USA. And she kind of, in her poem, I think sums up some of the stuff I've been trying to share with you. Here's her poem then, Biodiversity. Biodiversity is many things. Birds, trees, flowers. Everything helps everything. Sit and watch it weave for hours. Robins, sparrows, mallards and blackbirds, all and more are part of all of it too. How could we put all of this into words when we really don't want to? Why cause something to lose its sensory beauty just so you can say to people, I went walking through the city and saw a flower today? Words can never express the way nature enriches lives. Let's put study with words to rest and then feel how much nature thrives. Sadly, animals are quickly disappearing, and their unique essential cultures, one per week, songbird song we won't be hearing. What if we could understand what they speak? Nature is beautiful wonder in so many ways, but humans deny it and ruin it so swiftly. Nature can now feel as if it's beyond us. It isn't seen by us much these days. Yeah, I know that's a bit of a sad ending, isn't it? Ooh. Yeah, I've just remembered what the third thing is. Don't bother about keeping tidy. So you got the three things. Don't stay on the outside of the biodiversity by trying to become a professor through the books, the videos and the documentaries. Don't consider yourself as joining nature, connecting with nature, considering how you're denying yourself from nature. And the third thing is, don't be tidy. You don't have to mow the lawn. You don't have to pick up all the rubbish. You don't have to have a neat and orderly compost bin. So those are the three things, and I think I better close there. So that's the Sunday session on biodiversity. Next week it's water folklore and divination with the water connection. So I hope you'll join me next Sunday. I'm glad we were outside. Midges didn't bother. The wind's coming up now. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday and enjoy your activities in biodiversity and enjoy the wonder of it all. Thanks for watching, and I'll answer some of your comments in a minute. Thank you. Bye.